Hello. Good morning, Chen. How are you doing on this Friday? Good morning, Finbar. Hi, Jenna. Happy Friday to you, too. Good morning, B-Murph. Are you guys doing all right this Friday? Good morning, Hash Brown. Hash Brown swag. Good morning, Wanderer. Belkut says tired and overwhelmed, to be honest, but good otherwise. Hey, you're not the only one. I can guarantee that. So you're certainly not alone. Yeah, this time of the semester, it definitely gets overwhelming. And I think it's good to be able to admit, like, oh, I am tired and overwhelmed and at the limit. So good for you, Belkut, for being able to express that. Good morning, Joe Jason. And I know it's hard during school, but if you can ever press the pause button and just say like, hey, I just need to turn everything off, sleep, recoup a little bit. However that looks for you, I think it's really important to do that from time to time. Hey, good morning, Joe Jason. Good morning, Amin. Yep, that was yesterday for me. Did you take a little... Were you feeling overwhelmed and you took a little break, or... It's all about balance, right? Yeah, I agree. I think it's... Yeah, it's tough. Could you talk about the second part of the project? Are you talking about the group project? Gotcha, okay. Yeah, let's see. I'm getting around 10 seconds for the quarter-mile race. Are we supposed to get significantly lower time? I don't know. I've heard of some people getting 10 seconds. I don't know if you can get lower than that. Where's this thing? I'm not sure what the best time is. We got 10.06, the best we can do. Hey! And the fun thing is, oh, Hash Brown, you broke 10 seconds? It's tricky, guys, because I think there's lots of different solutions that can result in low times. Like, something we know about a Tesla, for example. A Tesla has its highest torque at 0 RPM. Wait, maybe I can pull it up real quick. So, let's see. Like, if you look at a Tesla torque curve, it's something like this. This is the torque, and this is the engine speed on the x-axis. So the torque is highest, and then it kind of stays constant for a while, and then it decreases. And I mean, Teslas, they definitely pull in a quarter-mile race. But I also know that if you put a Corvette against a Tesla, for example, a Corvette has no torque at 0 RPM. It looks very different. Probably actually this right here I kind of modeled after the torque profile of a Mustang. But anyways, a car like this will catch up with the Tesla at the end of the quarter-mile race, and they'll get a very similar quarter-mile time, maybe just like a little bit different. So it's two different strategies, like the Tesla very quick out of the gate, and then it kind of loses its advantage as the race gets longer. But something like a Mustang gains advantage the longer the race goes. All I'm saying is this graph, to get a really fast time, it could look very different. But I mean, I know certain principles that you definitely want to apply. Like if I give you these constraints, a Hellcat will actually beat a Tesla Model S P100D with the right tires. Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of it comes down to the tire grip. But you should definitely push right up to these constraints. Like this example I give you, it's definitely not it's not as fast as possible because I didn't create as much horsepower or torque as I could have. And I know some people are taking an optimization approach to this. Like there's some optimizers within MATLAB to try to have a computer try a bunch of different combinations and find what works best. So it's up to you, like what kind of strategy you use. But I want you to feel like there's not like one perfect answer that we're going for here. There's going to be many different answers that can all result in a fast car. And part of my goal for this project is to just get you thinking about that as a team, because it's pretty fun. When you look at the torque profiles for different fast cars, they all look very different. And then once you throw on top of that you're picking your own gear ratios, that adds another layer. So I want you to play around with it. Are you guys enjoying that project? If the time was enough, we may do some optimization via particle swarm or genetic algorithm. Yeah, I think that'll be a very interesting result. Yeah, I think you guys should have fun with it, you know? Like, don't stress too much about the second part. Like, make sure that you guys as a team come up with a code that, you know, can replicate these results, and then you know that your code's working. And once you get to that point, have fun with the second part. Like, just try to make it as fast as possible. Know that there's not one answer, and a lot of your classmates are getting like a low 10-second time. So if you can beat 10 seconds, Hash Brown said their team got 9.8. If you can get into the 9 second, that's pretty cool. Finbar asked, do you know how fast it can actually go? I don't know, because there's a bunch of different answers to this too. Like it's hard to have one optimal answer. I'm not convinced. Well, there has to be a fastest time, right? But I don't know if there's only one way to get to that fastest time. And I don't know what the fastest time is. The best that I've heard is what Hash Brown allegedly said, 9.8. What we should do, we'll put together a list We'll see who's getting the top time. It's not a competition, but I think it's kind of fun. 11 dimensional minimums are kind of hard to find. Yeah. Yeah, there's there's a lot of optimal solutions. No, have fun, guys. Enjoy it. Work with your team and have fun. Okay, we got to get going. But I got to change this title first. This is what are we doing? We're doing the bicycle model, but it's not for bicycles. I guess you could use it for a bicycle, but it's primarily used for cars. Let's talk about it. I gotta bring this music back a little bit. Okay, so now we're getting into modeling the dynamics of a car in a more complicated fashion. So let's look at this car. You guys know what this car is from, right? So in general, you know, you can move longitudinally, you can turn, you can corner, and as you do this, you can rotate about this longitudinal axis. We call that roll. You can rotate about this vertical axis. We call that yaw. And you can rotate about this lateral axis, which pitches the nose of the car up and down. So we call it pitch. All right. And yes, that's right. Back to the Future. This car, if you drive it up to a specific speed, 88 miles per hour, that's correct. It transports you to who even knows when. A different time. So while you're moving around a track, you're taking Great Scott! And you've experienced this in your own car. You know that a vehicle, it'll pitch. Like if you throw on the brakes, you're gonna feel yourself like lurch forward, and the nose of the car actually kind of like goes down, right? And the tail end goes up a little bit. So longitudinal acceleration causes pitching, and then your car rolls when you corner. So lateral and longitudinal accelerations cause these motions of the car. And so we've been looking at tires, right? And when you put different normal loads on a tire, it changes those tire properties. So like when your vehicle rolls, it puts more weight on your outside tires. So when you're taking a corner hard, that puts different normal loads on your tires, and this will modify important tire properties like cornering stiffness. Cornering stiffness is basically a measure of how much lateral force you get per lateral deformation of your tire. So you put more normal load on a tire, it's going to give you more cornering power. Okay, so we're going to work towards modeling all of this complicated behavior on the track, but the bicycle model is like a stepping stone towards that. So a stepping stone towards getting all of these different effects is the bicycle model. It's kind of like an intermediate model. It's not super complicated yet. And so how is this simpler? What is it ignoring? This bicycle model is going to ignore pitching and rolling. So it's kind of ignoring how the loads on the tires might change during a race. But it captures the majority of planar motion. So I mean like moving, like if you had a bird's eye view, like a drone looking down on a car, and you just watch how the car is tracing a path on the road from a sky view, that's like how it moves in a plane. And the bicycle model captures that really well. And it leads to some important results that we'll be unpacking over the next couple weeks. So I have a little flow chart here that I think is fun because it shows where the bicycle model fits in to what we've done so far. Gary says I have a bunch of drone videos. Oh, from when you're at a track? Do you have drifting drone videos? You need to share some of those videos. You can't keep those to yourself. Okay, so each of these boxes, we're gonna make a flow chart here, and this is gonna help you decide what we're gonna talk about the bicycle model. So this box represents the bicycle model, and these two other boxes represent other models that we've already looked at. So most recently, we've looked at some tire models. So what is a tire model? Well, like we have the graph of, maybe I can squeeze it in this box. We could have lateral force versus slip angle. That's a tire model. And it looks, it looks something like this, right? Like lateral force increases with slip angle up to a point, and then the force starts to like drop off. So that's what I mean by a tire model. We have some relationship like that. And then the other model that we did first in this class was the drivetrain model, where you start with the engine torque, put them on Discord. Yeah, throw those on Discord. I know there's like a limit to the file size you can upload, which might kill your vibe. So the drivetrain model relates how we go from the engine all the way to producing tractive force. Okay, so let's put some arrows on here. Let's connect everything. So the bicycle model, this is the output. It'll tell us the planar vehicle motion. So imagine looking at a car from Hank says, I'm listening while doing the brake job on my car. Hey, that seems very appropriate. So the output of the bicycle model is the vehicle motions. Let's talk about the inputs to the bicycle model. All right, so one of the inputs that we're going to provide to this model is the steer angle delta. So think about you're turning your steering wheel. So that affects your planar motion, right? What else do you control? So this steer angle goes to the tire model, which it'll when you steer the tire, it also creates a slip angle depending on the speed that you're going. And then based on that slip angle, we're going to produce some lateral tire forces at the front and the rear tires. So those forces are going to go to the bicycle model. So lateral tire force. Okay, so that's the function of a tire model. It tells you how much force you're getting out of a tire at a given time. So another input, if you're sitting in the car, it's what do you do with the pedal? So the throttle. So the drivetrain model, you give a throttle input. When you press the gas pedal, it opens what we call the throttle body. It lets air into the engine, and that's what allows it to turn over and make torque. And we didn't talk too much about the relationship between the throttle and the engine torque. I might have mentioned it, but it's a pretty easy modification to our model to make the input be the throttle, okay? And what comes out of this drivetrain model? Well, we know, like when you're doing the project right now, we get tractive force and so on, and that leads to acceleration. But I'm going to make this, I'm going to make the output instead be the wheel angular, wait, let's make it the, no, okay, we'll make it the wheel angular acceleration. And we know that the wheel angular acceleration, because tires deform, that's going to be a little different than the angular acceleration of the tire itself. So I know that's complex, but the point is that the tire is deforming. So what we do is we take this motion of the wheel hub, we give it to the tire model, and we're going to get another tire force out of this. We're going to get the tractive force. And I'm assuming this is a rear wheel drive car, so I'm just putting the rear tire there. And remember, in our drivetrain model, the tractive force, it produces like an extra torque on the drivetrain components. So that kind of feeds back, and it makes this feedback loop where I'm applying a throttle. It eventually produces a force at the road, but that force at the road produces a reactive torque on my axle and so on. And so it's like making this feedback loop. Okay. So these boxes on the left, this is stuff that we've kind of looked at, and this is what your project involves right now. Well, really, your project doesn't involve a tire model, but that's okay. So, but this stuff gives us tire forces that we feed to the bicycle model, and the bicycle model gives us the resulting vehicle motion out of that. And actually, it's important because this vehicle motion feeds back into the tire model, because depending on how fast you're going, how much you're cornering, that's going to affect your different accelerations. So like some of the things that are fed back are your longitudinal acceleration and your lateral acceleration. And depending on that motion, that'll affect, when you turn your steering wheel, what kind of load that puts on the tire. So I think it's cool to step back from time to time, make a flow chart and say, like, where does all of my knowledge fit together? And so basically we're at the point where we're adding another piece to our toolbox to predict not just straight line motion of a car, but just wherever it wants to move in a plane. Okay. So yeah, basically by providing the bicycle model with tire forces and a steer angle, we can predict the planar motion of a vehicle. So this bicycle model is super useful, but one application I want to point out is autonomous driving. You can take this model that we're going to derive, and this is the kind of model that a Tesla is using to make it stay in a lane, hopefully. So if you're interested in control systems, you're going to take this model and do some control with it. Okay, let's get into the bicycle model. Yeah, hopefully the Tesla does stays in lane, right? Hopefully it puts on the brakes at the right time. It seems to be doing pretty well, right? Would you fall asleep behind the wheel of a Tesla? Would you trust it? I don't know if I would, but I think it does a good job. Okay, this is an interesting thing about the bicycle model. No way. Let Jesus take the wheel. Let Elon Musk take the wheel. Okay, so this is how a car turns into a bicycle. The bicycle model lumps together the front tires. It takes both front tires, turns them into one tire, and it lumps together the rear tires as well. So let's break this down a little bit. You know, generally when you're turning, you steer the front tires and you have a steer angle at your right front tire, so delta right front, and you generally have a different steer angle at your other tire, delta left front. So this depends on the steering geometry, but in case you were ever curious, when you turn the steering wheel, your different tires turn a different amount. Abhinav says, can this concept help in ABS control systems? Yes. Oh yeah, this model helps with traction control. Well, it's best to have a 4-wheel model for traction control, but this is, when you can do the bicycle model, you can quickly extend it to a 4-wheel model. So when you, okay, and we know that each of these tires is going to have its own cornering stiffness. So cornering stiffness is C sub alpha. All right, this is the left front tire. So I have C alpha left front, C alpha right front, and these cornering stiffnesses are always changing as you're driving. Right rear, depending on how the weight is shifting on these tires. But remember, the bicycle model is ignoring some of this weight shift because we squeeze both of these tires together to make what I call a super tire. Why do I call it a super tire? Because the cornering stiffness of this one front tire, what we have to do is combine the cornering stiffnesses of the two original tires, because we combined them. So you could think of it like a super tire. Can't put videos on Discord, 8 megabyte max. Yeah, the same thing happened to me when I tried to put that Lancaster Speedway stuff up. You gotta throw it on YouTube, man. Okay, now, also instead of having 2 steer angles, we're just gonna have one in this model. So this is the steering input to the bicycle model. It's how much this like super tire is steered. All right, so that's how you squeeze tires together. So the resulting front and rear tires you could think of as super tires, like I said. You could put the video on Google Drive. Oh, that's a good point. And give us a link. So these are super tires because they have effectively twice the cornering stiffness of one of the original tires. And the steer angle of both front tires are considered to be the same. Or we end up just having one steer angle for this model. Okay, so that's the gist of a bicycle model. Now, because the tires are combined, this model, I've mentioned this before, it doesn't account for load transfer between tires. Because there's just one tire. There's no tire to shift your load to while you're cornering. And like I said before, this model's planar. So there's no rolling, no pitching, no up and down motions of like suspension dynamics. Okay. let's get into some details. We're gonna make a free body diagram. So first I'll zoom out of this so you can like see what this is. So yeah, you can see this is the front super tire, and I steered it a little bit to the right. We have the rear super tire. And usually you don't steer the rear tires, even though there are some cars where that happens. But we're just assuming that this tire is fixed. It's like aligned with the longitudinal axis of the car. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this. We're going to break it down piece by piece, define some variables and quantities that we'll need. So let's just talk about the weight distribution first. You can see the center of gravity right here. And I call this G. Hey, you got the brake off. Congratulations, Hank. So the center of gravity is located somewhere between the front and the rear axle, obviously, or you're going to have something very wrong with your car. And the distance between the front and rear axles, we call that the wheelbase. And if you want to get the distance from the CG to one of your axles, we have these variables like L sub F, L sub R. It's just the distance of the CG from the front or the rear axle. Okay? So that's the weight distribution thing. And actually, I put a little note down here, which I won't spend too much time on because we talked about it before. But the front weight percentage, you can calculate. So the front weight percentage is how much weight is on the front tires relative to the total weight of the vehicle. You can calculate that quickly using this formula. So I'll just mention that quickly. And depending on how much weight is on these tires, you can estimate the cornering, stiffness, properties, whatever. Okay, let's look at the CG really quick. We have our vehicle axis system. So you have B sub X, that's the longitudinal axis of the car. B sub Y, the lateral axis of the car. And this is stuck to the car and it moves with the car. So this coordinate system is a moving reference frame, and it's called the body frame. And this right here is the velocity of the center of gravity relative to the origin of our fixed frame, O. So I wrote that right here. It's just the velocity of the center of gravity with respect to a fixed frame. Let's also talk about this omega term, because if you're taking a corner, let's say you're taking a right corner, then your vehicle is rotating, or the body frame, we could say, which is fixed to the car, the body frame is rotating relative to the fixed frame with some rate. Like if you're going in a circle, your car is rotating in space. So that's the angular velocity of the vehicle with respect to the fixed frame. So we're imagining this thing translating, it's moving in some XY direction, and it's also like rotating in space. Let's focus on the front tire now, because there's a couple angles I want to point out. Okay, this, we mentioned that there's a tire coordinate system as well. And one axis of the tire is right along the wheel plane. And I actually can't remember what I called this axis. Maybe it was like X front tire. I'm making this up right now. Okay, but you get the point. There's like this axis defines like where your tire is pointing. Now, here I have the velocity of the front tire. Now, what am I doing here? Because I already defined the velocity of the CG of the car And isn't the front tire stuck to the car? So how is it that... shouldn't the front tire be going at the same speed as the CG of the car? I mean, that's an assumption we made for straight line racing, that the whole car is moving as a unit in one direction, so everything's moving the same translational speed, right? So why does the front tire have a different speed than the CG in this case? Amin is saying they should, right? They should have the same velocity. Okay, let me tell you why. And we're gonna use this. We're gonna use this pin. So let's say this pin, everything is connected to the rigid body, right? So if I just move it forward towards the camera, everything is moving at the same velocity, right? But what if I rotate it as I move it towards the camera? That means that, like, the tip of the pin, it's actually moving, because it's doing like a circular motion and it's moving forward. It's moving faster than the center of this pin. Does that make sense? Like if you swing a club at somebody, the tip of the club is moving fast. Okay, that's a bad analogy. But, okay, the reason that the front tire has a different velocity is because this thing is rotating. Like as you corner, rotation and translation, yes. Because we're not purely translating, it's because the car's also rotating, that's why. So the tip has both translational and rotational speed. That's correct. That is exactly correct. So that's why I have to have a velocity. Okay, so this is velocity of front tire with respect to the fixed frame. And while we're at it, let's point out that the rear tire has its own velocity as well, because both of these ends are rotating about that CG. So velocity of rear tire with respect to fixed frame. So these velocities are different because of rotation. Let's go back to the front tire. Okay, so like we've studied with tires, the longitudinal axis of the tire is not usually aligned with the velocity of that tire. There's an angle in here measured from the longitudinal axis to the velocity vector, and what is that angle called? And there's a hint, it's going to be right here. Yes. Wait, the slipe side angle? Slip something? Very close, very close. Okay, this is a slip angle. Whenever you have this angle at a tire, slip angle at the front tire. And actually, not to confuse you guys, but the angle, the way I've shown it here, this is a negative slip angle, because we measure it from this axis to this axis, and like usually that would be following the right hand rule, right? And this would be a positive angle, but you have to remember that the z axis of a tire goes into the pavement. So it's pointing down. And so this is a clockwise rotation about the down axis. So it's a negative slip angle. Okay. And let's point out the slip angle at the rear tire as well while we're doing this. Because even though the rear tire doesn't steer, it can still have a difference between its longitudinal axis and its velocity vector. And the tire will deform. So it's not just your front tires that deform. You need to recognize that. The rear tires also have a slip angle. And because this is a counterclockwise angle from the top view, this is going to be a negative slip angle. Okay, so this is slip angle for the rear tire. And we know that slip multiplied with cornering stiffness, the product is lateral force. So in this picture, the rear tire is producing lateral force, the front tire is producing lateral force, and we are cornering to the right. Actually, let's draw the lateral force then while we're doing it. We know that the net lateral force, what's the difference between slip angle and steer angle? Oh, good. Actually, I should point that out, because I didn't even draw that here. Okay, the steer angle is the angle that this tire deviates from the longitudinal axis of the car. So if you look at this, you see that, okay, how much did this front tire actually turn? Well, that's talking about how much has the longitudinal axis deviated from the longitudinal tire axis. How much did it deviate from the car? So this is the steer angle. And this is a positive steer angle because it's going clockwise from this view, but that's counterclockwise about the downward axis, just to be confusing. So that's the steer angle. Okay, so there's a lot going on at the front tire, right? Ooh, we forgot to point out an important angle that Gary loves. And that's the difference between the longitudinal axis of your car and the velocity of the CG. Do you remember what this angle is called? I think I only mentioned it briefly, but it's this guy right here. And it's negative right here. Or wait. No, this is positive. It does have slip in the title. Yes! The side slip angle. So when you're drifting, it basically means your car is pointing a different direction than you're actually traveling. So if you build up side slip, you're probably drifting. But there's always a little bit of side slip in a car. Okay. We are moving right along here. Okay, what else do I need to... Okay, the only thing we need now, we need to put some forces on here. This is a free body diagram after all. Okay, so we know that, let's see. We're turning to the right here. We know from SAE convention that a negative slip angle produces positive lateral force, and positive lateral force is to the right. So just to like draw a picture to remind us, like this tire, if you look at it from the top, you're gonna see like a bubble where the contact patch is kind of smeared in the direction that we're cornering. And that's the same direction that our lateral force is going to act. And I know this drawing's getting very busy. But this is our lateral force in this case. And we know that it acts behind the center of the tire. So we'll just draw it right there. And, okay, so that's the lateral force. Now for the rear tire, let's assume that this is a rear wheel drive car. So number one, we're gonna have some tractive force at the rear. If we're delivering torque to that wheel. But if we're looking at this from the top, there's also going to be like a little bit of deformation on this tire. And because of that slip angle, right, that indicates that the tire's deforming a little bit. We're going to have some lateral force at the rear tire. And then if we zoom out a little bit here, you get to see the whole picture. This is what the bicycle model looks like when it's navigating a right turn. And there's so many symbols flying around right now, it's hard to even tell what's going on, right? Does the positive or negative of beta and alpha depend on the cornering direction? Yes, Chen. I will say as long as the tires are not sliding, yes. Because once the tires totally lose traction and say like you're spinning out on ice or something, then those conventions just go away because we've lost traction. But as long as the tires are sticking to the road, if you have a negative slip angle, that means you're going to be turning to the right for the rear and the front tires. The side slip angle, this one, I think it kind of depends. Yeah, that one depends. We'll talk more about it, but I think I've mentioned this before. When you take a corner at a low speed, the nose of your car is going to point outside of the corner. So this one, like this picture that I have here, I have the velocity vector going to the right, and the nose of the vehicle is pointed outside of this. So like if we're turning on a circle right now, this is like the path of the vehicle, sort of. But the nose of the car is pointed outside. That happens for all cars at low speeds. As you take a corner faster and faster, the nose of your car tends to point in. And this is like more dramatic. But in this case, the side slip would be negative. There's a special speed for every car where the nose is lined up with the velocity vector, and that's called the tangent speed. We'll derive that later. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, we have like 1 minute, but we made a free body diagram, right? So let's do the sum of forces. Let's at least finish that. That'll be a good result to finish with. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to first look at the forces that are acting along the longitudinal axis of the body. So like pointing down the nose. And so our forces, well really there's only 3 forces that I drew. 2 of them are at the rear tire. And this one is pointed right along the nose of the vehicle. It's the tractive force. So let's take it and throw it on right here. The mass times the acceleration in that longitudinal direction. Well, number one, it's going to equal that force. But we have to be careful here. And this just looks like a mess at this point, okay? But if you look at the lateral force, which is pointed perpendicular to the wheel plane of the front tire, notice that, I'm going to try to do this in green. If you broke this into components, you would have some component going purely to the right, and then you have some component that's actually pointing towards your rear axle. So when you corner the front tire, a component of its force is actually making you go slower. And that's called induced drag. Maybe I'll just like circle that. Induced drag. So whenever you turn a tire, a component of its force fights you. It creates induced drag. So we have to get this component of it. So we have our tractive force pushing us forward, but we have our induced drag fighting us, and I have to multiply this by the sine of the steer angle to get the component that's actually pointing backwards. And that's it. These are the forces. Now if we do the lateral force, so the force going to the right of the body, we don't even have to go back to the picture for this. We know that there's some lateral force from the rear tire. And then the lateral force from the front tire, it wasn't pointed directly to the right. It's kind of pointed diagonally, but we have to get the component of it that was going to the right, and that's the cosine of the steer angle. And oh wait, let's do the sum of moments. Let's do the sum of moments. And this is the last thing we'll do. So just some notation. You have the moment of inertia about the z-axis. And this is the angular acceleration about the z-axis. And we'll talk more about this symbol, psi. About z. The angle psi is your heading angle. But we'll get into that. Okay, so you're going to have your lateral force from the rear tire, but the moment that it produces about the center of gravity is based on the lever arm. So the distance that the lateral force acts from the CG. So let's go back to the picture. We have the lateral force right here, and we're looking for the moment it produces about the CG. So we need the distance from the CG to the lateral force, and that distance is going to be LR, because that's the distance from the CG to the axle. And then we're going to ignore this, but there's a tiny distance here that, because we know the lateral force actually acts a little bit behind the center of the tire. Do you remember what that distance is called? We used a symbol little e, and it has a very fancy name, this little distance. But if you take the moment arm LR plus E, it's, you know, I mean, it's basically LR. Like, let's not kid ourselves. So we tend to ignore this. So, and actually this produces a negative moment because it's acting, because this would tend to cause the car, like if you push to the right about this lever, it tends to make the car want to rotate counterclockwise, which from this, yes, the pneumatic trail, that's the special name of the little E. Such a fancy name for that. Okay, so that produces a negative moment. This tractive force doesn't produce a moment because it acts right through the CG, so that doesn't produce a moment. But oh man, this looks like a piece of abstract art at this point. But this component of the lateral force produces a positive moment because it acts over this lever arm, which is LF, and it wants to rotate the car in the opposite. Or wait. Yeah. Look, they're like fighting each other. Okay, so this, from the front tire, it produces a positive moment, and the lever arm is LF, and the force is this component, the component that's going to the right, cosine delta. Video sent to Discord? Oh, sweet. Okay, these are the sum of forces and moments on the free body diagram. And this is the beginnings of our bicycle model. Or this is like the cornerstone of it. These three equations, right? Because these Newton's laws produce a differential equation. And differential equations are what we use to control things. So this is the beginning of autonomous driving. Oh man, but we have a lot to do with these equations. It's gonna be pretty cool. Wait, let's see if we can go to Discord. These equations of motion are for four-wheel drives only, right? No. This one would be rear-wheel drive. This one's rear-wheel drive because, actually, I could make it... It's rear-wheel drive because I didn't put any tractive force at the front tire. I only put lateral force. But we could, if we made a force that goes along the direction of that front tire, FX front, we could make this four-wheel drive. Wait, let's see. Oh, I have to request access to your videos, Gary. All right, guys. That's the content for today. I might pull up some of these drone videos if I get some access here. But other than that, remember, your team project is due Monday morning. Have fun with that. Enjoy it. Have fun brainstorming. Send access, I think. I don't know. I suck with Dropbox. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Oh, okay. No homework due next week other than the project. I'm not sure. I mean, we have the project due Monday, right? But I'll probably assign a homework early next week. Wait, this is you? Oh, you're in it later? So this is where you have Sideslip. The other ones are drone videos. Gotcha. Yeah, Sideslip. Notice like tires are sliding when you drift too. So in terms of getting the most speed, it's suboptimal because tires make less force when they slide. All right, let's do a drone. Like this one. Oh. Oh, this is amazing. Wait, did you crash a drone? You just crashed a drone? Oh, you're in the silver car? This is you? You crashed a drone? What happened? What's going on? Oh my goodness. Rest in peace. I know. I know. Oh, this is so fun. Oh, I thought they were going to break another drone right there. Jeez, between the car and the concrete barrier. Oh, what do we have here? Jeez. Now this is interesting because right now this is turning, the vehicle's turning right, but look, the front tires are steered left. We're making a right-hand turn, locked out to the left. Now we're making a left turn, locked out to the right. Is that tire even on the ground? Wow. Where can I learn these drifting skills? It's because it's sliding and there's minimum friction force. Well, let's see. The rear tires are sliding. Okay, let's break this down. Like when you're cornering to the right, in order to push your car to the right, the tires have to produce a net force to the right. Okay, so that means that the rear tire and the front tire combined, they're producing force going to the right. These rear tires, they're sliding, which means that they are past their they're past the slip angle that produces, like, we know that around like 6 degrees of slip at a tire, that's when it produces its most friction force. These tires are beyond 6 degrees because they're sliding. They're not gripping anymore. These front tires are producing a force to the left. Right? Because it's steered left. The velocity vector of the tires, I mean, you're heading like to the right, you're quartering right. So this is a slip angle. What is that? Yeah, that's a positive slip angle. And so this is making a force to the left. So it's like you have a situation where your rear tires are holding you in this corner, and the front tires, that's confusing. Oh, I think that's to that produces a, oh, you know why that is? You know why that is? Because it looks like the front tires are actually turned in the direction of motion or close to it. No, it does. I think you're right. But okay, think about why the tires have to be turned different direction. Like, because so these tires, it has to do with preventing the car from just turning in circles. So like the rear tires are producing a force. The rear wheels are also towed inward for forward momentum. Okay, so the rear tires are producing a moment that or a force to the right. So that makes the car want to rotate like nose outward. So like the nose would spin this way because of the rear tires. Wait. And this is also producing a moment in that direction. So the tires are trying to make, yeah, it's trying to prevent the nose from spinning inward. You have to turn left, otherwise the rear end would just keep sliding out this way, and the nose of the car, you would start spinning nose into the corner. Yeah, it's preventing it from, see, the nose wants to go in, and so he's turning to the left to prevent the nose from going in. It's making a moment go the other way. So that strategy has to do with just preventing the nose from curling in. And I think that's always what's going on. Like the rear is sliding out and the nose wants to spin into the corner, and you have to counter steer to prevent it from just totally twirling on its oh yeah, you see all that weird steering geometry here. Oh, this is amazing. Thanks for sharing these. Look at that. Look at that inclination angle on this. Like these tires aren't like totally upright. It's kind of like tilted. You have a ton of these? Yeah, this is amazing. All right, guys. I got to run to another meeting. This has been really fun. You have a YouTube channel? Oh yeah, Gary, you got to put these on YouTube, man. But I got to go to a meeting. This has been a lot of fun today. It's always a lot of fun hanging out with you guys, studying road vehicle dynamics. I'll see you on Monday. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend, Amin. Have a great weekend, Jenna. See you, Hash Brown Swag. Gary, thanks again for these videos. This is awesome. Really fun. Really fun, you guys. Enjoy your Friday. Blessings on you.